Hey there. So Joy of Code just posted a nice little tutorial on how to use preprocessors, and it reminded me of some work I did to allow for Asciidoc source files to be used instead of Markdown in a SvelteKit site. So I wanted to just share the approach I took on that, and happy to get any feedback on it. To start out with, in the svelte config.js file, I imported ASCII doctor core and then made a processor function out of that. I made a new function. I called it SvelteKit, whatever. You can name it whatever you want. Um, and then I return here, taking the markup and then the content and file name input and checking if that ends with adoc. I then use the processor to convert the content that comes in, and then I can pass in some attributes to the ASCII doctor processor. Um, so that's taking care of that. That returns, this convert function returns HTML, and then I just return to the code the HTML that processes. So now with the extension .adoc, those files can be parsed and processed and returned as HTML like you would do with a Svelte file. I did also add some pre-rendering things like just warn for missing IDs and HTTP errors. I did this more like in development, um, just to make sure, as I'm stubbing out content and things, that when I had bad links or whatever, um, just warn me about it in the build. Don't blow up the build and hold up the parsing. So this will handle files in the routes directory pretty well that end with adoc. I have another, there was kind of another method here too, where in the source, there was some interest in having all of the content instead of putting all of the content files in routes, to just really let routes be route parsers and route processors and have the methods and so method is a type of content, blog is another type of content, and then all of the pages are sort of besides the home page, all of the pages are handled um, as just slugs that come into the route. And then from that, using page servers to essentially server side sort of parse it out, render it, and then pass in data back to be used in the layout. So, or in the page. So in this case, um, for any route here, knowing that I'm going to be handling um, content in the files will be in the content folder and not in routes. I have a slug dynamic variable here, and then in this page server.js, essentially getting now this could be probably better handled by like making a lib function that does this, and then you basically just call the function and have it return HTML and attributes and everything. But I'm kind of doing it here in the server. No need to have another file. It's pretty small. So in this case, there's two things that I want to do. I want to process the ASCII-doc source, but I also want the ability in those content files. So for example, the home page, to have front matter and use a page driven or sort of block driven layout system that allows both content in the blocks and ASCII.content to be used as, potentially if I have one section of the page that I want to have long form text, I can put that in the body of the ASCII-doc file at the bottom, and all of the properties and parameters and everything, attributes of the doc that can be used for dynamic, maybe conditional rendering and things like that down below. But then at the top be, in this case, structured data about the design blocks that I want to use. So design components. So I have this block section in the YAML, and then for each one of these blocks, structured data that represents, that particular block type, and be able to render out those components, feeding this data into those components for this page. So in this case, it's the home page. I want to handle that. So, oops, I went out a bit. Sorry about that. A little too far. So what you'll see here then is in the routes, if I can click the right thing, in the routes slug, that if I handle a route here, that on the as a load function, I can then get the params and the URL here, and then I can go ahead and import the ADOC file from that content folder based on the slug. Um, and then if ADOC file, go ahead and parse it, else throw an error that it wasn't found, right? So this is kind of the 404 handler that if it can't find an ADOC, just 404 it. And what's kind of nice about this import is if you throw this question mark raw at the end, then I just get the raw text string out of the file. So this import, that's what I'll have here. And then if that is, now I can do a few things. So one thing that you can do with the Asciidoc JS function is you can do this load function of the processor and get that all in there. And then I can get attributes. So this basically gives me all of the attributes from the Asciidoc itself. And then I can convert that file and get the HTML out of it, right? The skip front matter true allows you to sort of pass that through um, and not parse it. So that lets me put YAML at the top and not have that be sort of handled. And what it will do when it skips front matter is it will then pass an attribute called front matter um, into the uh, into the attributes, right? And so there I can say, hey, parse and give me the attributes front matter. And now this I'm parsing with the YAML package. So I'm going ahead and grabbing that attribute data, setting that now as front matter. So now I can return the HTML itself, the attributes that came out of the Asciidoc attributes, in addition to the front matter at the top of the file, and return all of that server side. So then in the page renderer, I import blocks. So I have a layout processor called block svelte, and then I get the data here. So I'm export let data. Now data will have attributes, front matter, and HTML will all be coming from that. In this case, I'm passing the data into the blocks function. So if the layout is blocks, I call blocks. Otherwise, I'm not handling a non-blocks based layout in this case, but I could fail over and say if it doesn't have blocks, then you're doing something else. You're just doing a page render or something like that. So, and then I think the next part will make sense here. So I can get like the title out of the doc title. In some of the other functions here, I haven't updated this one yet, but I'm handling this a little bit differently up at the top. I'm checking to see if doc title exists, to see if that was put into the Asciidoc attributes. If it doesn't, check that the front matter, see if front matter has a title variable and use, maybe default to the Asciidoc title or vice versa, so we can decide like which title is the most important and then use that to set the title in the head and then get the summary attribute from the Asciidoc for description. Again, these things I'll probably add a little bit better handling to kind of figure out how to generate a good description or summary from the content, but all of that's available now in data, so I can handle that there. Let's take one more. So all these different routes, like same thing with blog. Basically, I have a post handler. I can get that data out of there. And what'll happen at the higher level um, here is that at layout server and page servers here, so this one's handling essentially the home page rendering. The layout can handle, looking up all of the methods, so all the ADOCs and methods, all the ADOCs and content blog, getting all of those file references to be able to pass in for all of that information for reference later. And if we jump up here, actually I'm going to switch because I've added a bunch more stuff in this other branch that I haven't done yet. So like blog, for example, here post, so there's page server. Now we can go ahead and get all that information. I can do some things like generate a word count, try to figure out how many words are in the content and pass that string in. Go ahead and look up the blog post, check to see if there's an ADOC file, get a bunch of attributes, get front matter. If there's authors, iterate through the authors and push that into an authors array, pass that back, get a plain text representation of this, right? And now I can do things like HTML, attributes, front matter, authors, and count words through plain text and get back a word count, or else 404. So there's quite a bit more you can do with these as you're handling those files and how you get information out of them, but it works pretty well there. And then I wanted to show this library file. So some folks have asked about the blocks, kind of how you do block handling. And so in this case, this is how I'm doing it. I'm importing various components. These are all design components from a components folder. And then I do kind of a block reference string that would be in the front matter for what the block reference would be, and then what component that pairs to, and export the data. And then down in here, I do an each block for front matter in the block section as block, iterate through those, if the block and if the reference content, or if it's content with image. So both of these, um, I'll be using the content from the body of the Asciidoc as part of it. So the first thing it does is sets the svelte component equal to the component up based on the reference. So that pairs that up, and then passes in a block variable for the block data, any of the front matter data for that block, and then data equal to data, passing that in. Else, if it's not content, then essentially I don't really need to pass the data in. I'm only getting information out of the block. Nice thing is there, I don't need that HTML and stuff that would be rendered for that. I just need the sort of block section data that we have up in the front matter, and that renders that component. So you can do some conditional handling, maybe certain component types need different data than others. You can break that apart here with some conditional stuff. And then essentially what we're doing is we're just rendering each one of these components in order based on the front matter that was set in the page data, and rendering those components out here and passing the information into that. And then you can see, for example, like, I'm saying block equals block. I think I can do this just block curlies and it would do the assignment, but I was having some issues with that, so I'll have to revisit. I don't think I need to do block equals block, but I'll check that out. But anyway, if I go then to lib components and we do something like announce, then all we're doing is just exporting that block and then passing that HTML structured data, or that front matter structured data in. And then, for example, here, looking to see if it has a title. If it's got a subtitle, render a little subtitle section in the block and then render that out. So that's a pretty simple version of the component. You can do things more complex maybe here with like, let's see, let's do some like hero is fairly complicated. So, we might have, like, if it's got a video, render a video object. Else, if image is defined, do the image reference. And I'm using ImageX to do some formatting on that stuff and cropping and auto handling all that. And then then do some overlay here for coloring over the video. And then if like there's a call to action top section, render in this bit with the text out of it and the link out of it, kind of building up some links and references, some text in there. Centering up some title text, some subtitle stuff, some more call to actions, maybe an array of buttons or links. And based on if they're a link or a button definition, you can handle all of that in here. So this would be a more complex sort of a design component that's got a few more parameters that get passed in. And if we take a look then at something like the homepage data under content home, take a look at that. So here you can see a hero, for example. Here's the title, the subtitle. It has a video defined and some alt text for that. It does not have image data in there, file name or alt for that. I do prioritize video over image. If they were both defined and video is defined, then I'll use video, else kind of fail back to whatever the image is. This could even be used to give you like a thumbnail that you replace after the video loads or something. So that could be useful there. Call to action top, there's just sort of like one action item at the top. Then you could have an array of call to actions for the bottom part of that. And then it goes into announce. And if we take a look at, what this ends up looking like in the end, I'll go to this merge request I'm working on. Here's the deploy preview for that. So this is like the home page, the video's loading in the background, it starts playing. There's that top call to action. Here's your title, subtitle, some call to action below that's set to be a button. Here's like an announce chunk. Here's like a split image. So each one of these pieces is being passed in, image data, text data, all of it to drive what's inside of that component, even the colors and the colors of all the icons and everything. All of it's defined in the structured data that drives these elements of each design component. Um, and then down here at the bottom, we have all this content, right? And so if we look back at that source file, go back to here, source, content, home, here let me do this here at the bottom. All of this stuff is what gets stuck into the content with image. All I really said is a title and an image on that, and then um, that drives this and this title text, and then the rest of this stuff is all Asciidoc to HTML from the body of the Asciidoc content itself. This could have headings, and this could have all kinds of stuff going on in there. So anyway, there's some pretty nice ways to both handle this, ADOC files as, um, Svelte components, like handling the ADOC file as it's passed in in the routes. This method is handling these as almost like data assets with complex long form content in the body of it, with front matter data, um, you know, at the at the top of it that can drive design components for the entire page itself. So you can see you can use full Asciidoc here. All right. Well, that's about it. I will wrap it up there. If you have any questions, it'd be great to hear about it, and hope you have a great day.